I would like to start by acknowledging the Gunai Kurnai people of the traditional custodians of country on which the proposed fingerboards project is located. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and recognise their enduring connection to the land, waters, culture and community. Today's webinar is an opportunity to hear from GCM about the development of their new fingerboards project and an opportunity to also ask questions of the leadership team. Today, you will hear from Michelle Wood, CEO of Gippsland Critical Minerals, who will make a presentation about the new design of the project, some of the key changes and the path towards an Environmental Effects Statement, or EES, and GCM's Technical Director, Stefan Wumerans. Following that presentation, which we expect to take approximately 20 minutes, we will address the questions that have been submitted online, and then we will open the floor to additional questions. We will also have GCM's Director of Community and Stakeholder Engagement, Mr. Ryan Leslie, here to assist in answering questions. If you would like to submit a question, you can do so in the Zoom meetings chat feature, and I'll read out as many questions as we have time for today. We've obviously also received pre-submitted questions. I encourage you to do that throughout the presentation, submitting via the chat feature rather than leaving your questions until the very end. I'll now hand over to Michelle Wood, GCM CEO, who will show you a presentation and take you through an update on the rescoping project.
Hi everyone, my name's Michelle Wood and I want to also pay my respects to the Gunai Kurnai people as the traditional custodians of the land on which the Fingerboards project is located. I wanted to take you through today just some updates as well as an opportunity to share some of the key changes that we've been making to the project and then give you an opportunity to ask questions of myself and of the team, Ryan Leslie, who's our Head of Stakeholder and Community, and Stefan, who's our Technical Director. So first up, I might just take you through who GCM is and explain a little bit about our structure, and then I'll move on to talk about where we are at the moment in the project's life cycle, then go through the EES process, as Jonathan mentioned, before we get into some of the key changes. So this is Gippsland Critical Minerals. Gippsland Critical Minerals is a company half owned by Razier, which is a group of about 150 shareholders, and Appian Capital Private Equity, which is a UK-based private equity company. Razier is Australian-owned, Appian is UK-owned. Appian and Razier each have 2 spots on the board and 2 spots on a technical committee and 2 spots on a finance committee each. I report through to those technical and finance committees and through to the board. And this is the team that we've put together over the past 4 months since the retention license application was extended. We've got Ryan heading up our community and stakeholder team and Stefan heading up our technical team. And those teams have permanent staff, but there's also contractors from geologists, engineers, mining professionals, technical and rehabilitation specialists as well, filling out each of that group. You might go next slide, Shannon. Thank you. So one of the questions that I get asked a lot as we make our way around is why fingerboards? Why this area and why is it so important? And so recently we conducted, so I could answer that question with confidence, we re-assayed some of the drilling samples that we took in 2021, and these are the results that we found, and these are significant, and we had them independently verified by Adamus Intelligence. And what they found is that the fingerboards area has an opportunity, if the project goes to fruition, to contribute 7.1% of the global supply of heavy rare earths. And they're the rare earth that make the magnets that go in electric vehicles and wind turbines, satellite, GPS, MRIs, that sort of thing. 1.4% of the global supply of light rare earths and 7.2% of the global supply of zircon. The reason that we're focusing a lot on the heavy rare earths is because at the moment, China supplies about 95 or 98% of the global supply of heavy rare earths. So if you take China out of the global supply number, that 7.1 jumps to around 95%. So that's a really significant contribution that this area could make to the global supply of these heavy rare earths that are in need. And it's not just, though, the global significance. I just want to touch on quickly some of the benefits that means for Victoria and locally. So it would generate around $90 million in the annual contribution to Victoria's economy and 300 long-term jobs over the life of the mine, which is about 22 years, and then 180 million in royalties for the Victorian budget. So this is where we are now. So as I sort of touched on before, we had our retention license extended in October last year. So GCM had retention license application. So there are 3 licenses. So you have an exploration license, then a retention license, and then through to a mining license. You cannot mine until you have a mining license. And we've at the moment we've got 2 retention licenses. They're called RL 2026 and RL 2023. So 2 years ago, GCM, sorry, Shannon, back to the map. GCM applied to have its retention licenses renewed, and they were renewed last year, 2 years after we applied. And that means we're in year 3 of the renewal term. So you can see that orangey or apricot area is the RL 2026 area. What also happened in October last year was that exploration license applications that Gippsland Critical Minerals had in with the regulator for that green area were denied. And that has now become a moratorium area. And that is significant and a significant difference from 2021. So last time this project was proposed in 2021, all of that green area was held by CalBar at the time, I think, as exploration license areas. That is now off limits. That cannot be mined. It will never be mined as far as the regulator is concerned, and nobody can mine it. So it's all off limits, a moratorium area. So the only area we're talking about here is that RL 2026 area. Now we can move on to the next one. So when the license milestones were renewed, they were done so under strict conditions, and those conditions related to improved environmental outcomes, rescoping the project to improve environmental outcomes, and to addressing the concerns raised by stakeholders in their submissions that they made in 2021 and through the EES findings. So these are the milestones that were set. As I mentioned, we're in year 3 because the clock starts ticking on the milestone, on the retention license from when you apply, not when you get it. So that's why we're in year 3. So our first year is actually year 3. And you can see that those milestones require us to substantially change the boundaries and the buffer zones to rescope the project. And if you look at them, about 8 or 9 of them require us to improve the way that we were communicating our stakeholder engagement and community sentiment policies, procedures, and how we engage. So that is the strictest milestone conditions of any company, any mining company in Victoria. And it's certainly something that we're reporting on and talking to the regulator about all the time. Our first quarterly report is due at the end of March, and that will give an update on how we're tracking towards these milestones. One milestone that I just want to draw your attention to, and we'll move through to talk about this in more detail, is milestone number 48 in year 4, which is the decision on a new EES referral. So that's what you've seen, or some of you may have seen. It's called a EES self-referral. And all that means, and we might flick through to the next slide, Shannon, this is a sort of handy flow chart. What that means is we put our proposed new design to the Minister for Planning, and the Minister for Planning assesses, that's called the self-referral, and the Minister for Planning assesses whether or not a new environmental effects statement process needs to go ahead. All of our dates, all of our timing, and all the work we're doing is designed and based around the fact that we will be going ahead at that stage with an EES, and that's what we expect the Minister to determine. So given that, where we are at the statement is, where we are in the process is right at the very beginning. So we are before the self-referral, we are right at the beginning. We will go to self-referral in December this year, and then the Minister will determine whether or not a full EES is required. And along the way, it's a multi-year process with many opportunities for community consultation and community engagement. One of the things that is obviously a really important part of the EES are the technical and environmental studies. And I'll pause just after this because I've covered a lot of ground, but I just wanted to give you guys a snapshot of the sorts of studies and reports that happen as part of an EES and that make up those chapters. So we're not even at this stage yet. We're doing this pre-work, and the changes we take you through today, some of them touch on these, but we're yet to be subjected or subject to or analysed as part of our technical and environmental studies process. So you've got biodiversity, agriculture and horticulture, air quality and greenhouse gases, groundwater, surface water, soils and rehab, noise and vibration, radiation, traffic transport, landscape and visual, land use and planning, And then we've got 4 areas there: cultural heritage, economics, human health and social, which make up the environmental and socioeconomic chapters of the EES. So I'll pause there for a minute. I'm just going to hand over to Stefan, who's going to talk a little bit about the mining process here at Fingerboards and what we propose. And then we'll get through into the main aspects of the project, what we've changed since 2021, and then we can open up for questions.
Thanks, Michelle. So I'm just going to talk a bit about the mining process, how it's different to what has been people are used to in Victoria and Gippsland, and just how mining and rehabilitation fits together. Just want to skip to the next slide. Okay, so if we look at that slide, the big difference with mineral sands mining, if we compare to say coal mining or Hazelwood or Yallourn, is that it is it's a continuous mining process. The ore that we're mining is effectively it's an ancient beach sand that contains 5% heavy mineral. Why that is important is in the processing we extract about 5% of the material. 95% of that material has to go back into the void. So it's not a process where we consume the product that comes out of the pit like coal. It is everything needs to go back and in a continuous process to keep mining. So and that figure on the screen sort of roughly describes the process from when the first step is removing topsoil, and the last step is replanting and revegetation, and that happens in a linear fashion shown on the screen. It could be in slightly different configuration, but the steps all stay the same. I'm just going to talk you through that just so there's a bit of context for the changes that we'll be describing later on in this presentation. Now the ore is a layer of effectively, I'll call it beach sand, which is what it is. It's an ancient beach sand, and that's been buried over the last 5 million years under a sequence of gravel that we've got to remove first to get access to the ore. So we start by removing topsoil and then stockpiling that for rehabilitation later on. We remove subsoil and then we remove the overburden. As the overburden is removed, it's immediately placed back into a starter void or the void that's been mined out previously. So the overburden almost never leaves the pit. It just goes from one space into another space. The ore is then mined. It's mined with what's called a mobile mining unit, and the purpose of that mobile mining unit is simply it's fed with a front end loader or an excavator, and it just adds water to the ore. It slurries the ore, and we pump that ore to the process plant. So the ore isn't hauled to a ROM pad as such. In traditional mining, it leaves the void in a pipe, and it finds its way back to the void in a pipe. So once the ore is processed, we're left with a void, of which the basement is the lower sands unit. That, like I said, the ore after it's processed, 95% of that material has to go back into the mining void, and that's the next step. We return the sands as a co-disposal tailings into a cell that's just been mined. So as we're moving along, which will just continuously backfilling behind us, the co-disposal is a fairly rapid dewatering and consolidation of that sand. So we remove the water from the sand from the tailings, and that's pumped back to the process plant for reuse. So we recycle the water continuously, but there are some losses due to evaporation and seepage, which we replace with water from other sources. Because it consolidates so fast, we can either get, as we remove overburden from the front, we can immediately place it onto the back of the tailings. Once the topsoil is and the overburden's been returned, it's shaped and trimmed to the final landform, and then topsoil is immediately placed on top of it, and it's revegetated. So what you find is you really just have two small holes moving around across the deposit as mining progresses. So it's never one large void. It is just two continuously moving mine voids. Rehabilitation is critical in this process. It's one of the major mitigation methods for dust and for water quality from surface runoff. We need to rehabilitate the land as fast as we can, and because we backfill the pit continuously, it means rehabilitation occurs continuously during the mine. It's not an end of mine activity, like say in Hazelwood. So we're continuously rehabilitating. There's a few photos at the bottom there of a site where you can see it was mined. The post-mining grading of the site occurs, and then there's seeding and revegetation. Now we're putting a lot of focus of that into this project. We're busy with those designs, and there'll be a demonstration put around that, but we'll talk a lot more about that later on in the presentation. That's a quick mineral sands mining 101. So I'll hand back to Michelle.
Thank you, Stefan. Okay. I'll just talk through some of the initial changes to the project. So where we are now is we've been out speaking to, as I said before, stakeholders since we got the retention license, as well as looking at the technical studies and really methodically going through each of the EES recommendations and submissions made last time to try and change the project design fundamentally so that we can address each one of those recommendations. So what we've done is, do you want to just flick through to the next slide, Shannon? What we're talking about today are 12 initial changes. So the first change, I'm going to be using my pointer there. If I sort of look like I'm squinting, I'm leaning into the map so I can see it as well. So what we've got here, and you can see on the screen, is a project area map. You can see the pink line there is the retention license area. And the first thing that we're committing to, which we announced at the time that we got the retention license, is this mining exclusion and buffer zone. So 1.5 kilometres between the Lindenau Valley horticultural area and mining activity. And that's to reduce any potential impacts and reduce concerns that the mining will impact the horticultural valley area. We're also fencing off and making conservation areas in the gullies. We were going to be mining those in 2021, but we will not be mining in there now. They'll be fenced off and created as gully areas, as conservation areas, and that preserves 370 hectares of high value native vegetation. What we'll also be doing, this is very significant reduction, noise and dust, is reducing the overall ore mining rate by 40%. So in 2021, there was a proposal to mine 1,500 tonnes per hour. We'll now be mining 900 tonnes per hour. That obviously reduces the impact at any one location, and we'll be mining in 2 mining units. So that will reduce noise and dust and truck movements at any one location. The size of the void itself, so as you saw in Stefan's graph, we'll be opening the void that we mine in sort of panels and strips, not like you see at Loy Yang when you drive past. It's not an open pit in that way. It's smaller strips or smaller panels. We mine in that area, and we use a method called in-pit dozer push, which is that number 4, to reduce the less on-surface trucks. So we use dozers to push the dirt along inside the pit, and this reduces one of the main causes of dust that was identified in the last project, which was moving the overburden from one end of the pit to the other end of the pit to fill it up again. So that's significant. There'll also be a storage shed for concentrate. Last time there was going to be open air stockpiles of concentrate. That was obviously going to create a lot of concern around airborne dust. That will now be in a storage shed. The 6th change we're making is we're looking at an option for a new process plant location, which is that red dotted line underneath. You can see down near Chettles Road, down the bottom there, where the little hotspot, there you go, that says project boundaries. That proposed new process plant location will reduce the truck movements from the process plant to the rail siding, and it means all the truck haulage with the concentrate will be on private roads and no longer on public roads. So Shannon, you can go back to the numbers. We'll also reduce the number of road relocations within the project area. So again, in the last project, there was going to be roads relocated within that area, and that there will now only be one small section of road relocated, and that's that yellow line and dotted line there. This will all be on our website if you can't see it exactly as it is now. And the fingerboards junction will be preserved. And that's a significant change from last time. We'll also be introducing below ground tailings for tailings management. So we'll be, last time it was above ground tailings, and it was going to be centrifuges, and we're going to fill the Perry Gully with tailings. We won't be doing any of that anymore. It will all be below ground tailings, and this reduces the risk of dam breaks when there's above ground tailings as well. This is a sort of slightly down the track, but one of the things that we're doing to really sort of reinvest in Victoria and in the region and in Australia is we're prioritising onshore processing. So in 2021, the concentrate was going to be processed in China. It will not be this time. It will go on the rail siding to Geelong Port or Melbourne Port, and then on a boat around to WA or the Northern Territory to be processed onshore in Australia. We're also introducing a new rehab strategy and demonstration pit, which Stefan spoke to, I think touched on briefly, and if not, we'll touch on it in the questions a little bit more. But we're prioritising returning the land to farmland or agricultural use. There will be some integration with native woodland, but it will also be returning to pasture land to get it back to its current condition as soon as possible. There's a new water strategy. We'll be using a combination of bore field and surface water. And we're one of the long-term benefits that we're trying to work with the community on, and we will be working with you plenty more over the coming years, is building a long-term community water security strategy. So we'll be accessing the deep water aquifer bore field via bore field, and when we and building a dam, and we want to be able to create a legacy item for the farmers and secure water long-term. So I've sped through those. I think I've gone a bit fast. Maybe Shannon, do you want to just put the map up so everybody can kind of have a quick look? I don't think I've missed anything. But maybe the only thing I will touch on is that the slower mining rate. So if we're mining 40% less, so 900 tonnes per hour instead of 1,500 tonnes per hour over 2 mining units, extends the life of the mine from 15 years to 22 years. So that's the only thing I think I missed. Everything else I think I've got. But Steph and Ryan, shout out if I've missed anything. Other than that, I'll hand to you. No, sorry, I know it's a bit hard to have a chat when we're all on the webinar.
Great, thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Stefan, for your contribution there. So I think we might move into the Q&A time. We've had some pre-submitted questions and received some in the live group chat, and we'll endeavour to get through as many of those as we can in the available time. We'll now go into time where I would read out the submitted questions that have been the meeting attendees have put forward, and Michelle and her team will address those in turn. We'll continue that right through until the end of the meeting. Okay, so the first question we've received here, and I might direct this to Stefan if that's okay. It's from Tony Cantwell from Committee for Gippsland. Can you describe the mineral pit size, as in depth, width and length during production? And what would the footprint look like after reclamation? That's from Tony Cantwell.
Okay, thank you. So the pit size of a typical panel, we'll be looking at about 200 meters by 200 meters as the active panel that's getting mined. In front of that, there's a panel where overburden is getting removed, and then behind that, there's a full panel that's now empty. It has been mined, and then sort of a partial panel behind that. Again, that's in the process of getting filled with tailings. So you can see that's sort of a block of 200 by 204 panels continuously moving. So in total, the area that's exposed is actually in this sort of 700 to 800 meters long by 200 meters wide, but not all of that being a void. The actual mined area within that void depends on ore thickness and depth. I'd say 2 panels of that is mined out, and 2 panels are in the process being filled. So I'm not sure if that's fully answered the question. The footprint, what does the footprint look like after reclamation? Well, it's backfilled again. There is no remnant void after rehabilitation. The full site is backfilled. It's
Maybe that the images on that previous slide is a good one. So that the 3 pictures at
Yeah.
the bottom, over what time period are they roughly, Stefan?
I'm not sure. I'll have to go check. In our case, it all depends on ore thickness, but we're talking about mining one of those 200 by 200 meter panels within a space of weeks, or in the case of where the ore is very thick, it might be a few months. So it moves through the sequence fairly rapidly, and that we'd want to within a matter of months after completion of backfill, and it's caveat here is it's a little bit seasonally dependent. We would want to start regrading and revegetation activities.
We'll fill the voids because this at about 3 months to 12 months, maximum of 12 months. And that's because they're smaller than the last project, which had it at 7 months to 44 months maximum. So we're looking at a 12-month maximum for filling the void.
Yes, and perhaps one small change that I'll just add to that also is the change of the tailing strategy now means that everything basically goes back into the void in a continuous process. There's not a holding stage for any tailings in between, but there was centrifuge cake or fine tailings dams in the previous proposal. That's been removed, so it's important. There's not an interim stockpile between the plant and the void getting backfilled. As it moves, it's a continuous process without breaks between the void and the process plant, and that enables us to rehabilitate faster.
Great. Thank you, Stefan, for that answer. And Michelle, and our second question is, I might ask Michelle to initially address this question. So how would you expect to partner with and or communicate with traditional owners, the Gunai-Kurnai native title holders? And that's come from Troy McDonald from the Gunai-Kurnai Land and Water Aboriginal Corporation.
Thanks, Troy. Thanks, Jono. Well, we want to communicate. We want to work in partnership. We've had some initial meetings with Glawak and First Nations. We want to do more. We've got a comprehensive plan that we're developing. Ryan, I might throw to you for the detail on this one, so you can talk through exactly what we've spoken about in the conversations that you've had to date or we've had to date.
Thank you, Michelle. We're really keen to partner with Glawak and broader First Nations organisations on a shared vision, and to explore the opportunities for benefit, for economic empowerment. Very keen to work within Pathways to Partnerships framework, take Glawak's lead on that, work with and respect that process. I guess a bit of context across all stakeholders is that the stage we're at the moment is that we've been very busy shaping up what this project looks like, very busy working on those changes. So we are looking forward to sharing that information in more intimate detail and seeking feedback and continuing the design process. All the benefit sharing initiatives that we're really keen to work on with you, they will run in parallel with the cultural heritage studies and management plans on the technical front.
Thanks, Ryan. And our third question, I might ask Ryan to address this one as well. So can you tell us about local supply chain opportunities? How will you engage local businesses, and how will we know about opportunities from Colin Young from the ICN? And it's a similar question to a question asked by Jonathan Winter. So I might just ask if you want to address them both together, which is a question about tendering for work, in particular, work around rehabilitation opportunities. So if, Ryan, you might want to answer those two similar questions together.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Colin. How are you? Firstly, on the jobs front, there will be around 300 jobs per annum across the life of the mine, the 22 years plus construction. So there's really significant employment opportunity. And our local employment and local procurement policy is something that we're really keen to shape up with ICN, Colin, and other key stakeholders. It makes no social or economic sense to procure from outside the region by and large. So we want to be able to do that locally. At this early stage, Stefan might talk to the demonstration pit opportunities at the start of next year. But what we're planning on doing is publishing the jobs, the type of jobs, the type of supply opportunities to gauge a first expression of interest and to showcase that we are planning on procuring locally. And then as the design and construction phase comes in, there will be work packages that are released, and we'll be knocking on your door, Colin, for that support. But we are beginning conversations with the Chamber of Commerce and other such institutions to shape up what that policy is and needs to be.
Yeah, Stefan, do you want to talk through the rehab procurement process and where we're up to and some of the work that's kicked off already?
Yes, I'll touch on. That's just one other thing that I just wanted to add to what Ryan had to say is mineral sands is, as far as mine processing goes, it's fairly simple. It's fairly simple stuff. It's sand and water mostly. Now, why that matters is that it's not a chemical plant. It's not an oil and gas plant. It's the type of manufacturing and the type of fabrication and supply inside a plant of the sort is really, it's structural steel. There's a few equipment pieces. It's pumps and pipes, lots of HDPE piping. So there is a lot of opportunity to break it into supply packages that are already available within the region. It's not specialized materials or equipment for the most part. So we'll be designing the procurement strategy for the project around that. Yeah, so as we said, there's a demonstration pit that we're currently busy designing, and we've already started reaching out to local suppliers on. There's a fairly large earth removing component on that. There's steel fabrication, pump supply. So all of those are things that we'll be prioritizing local suppliers.
Thank you. And our next question, there's again two questions that are similar, so I might just roll them together. So Lisa Lightowler, rather, from the East Bairnsdale Community Hub has asked, how do I hear about up-to-date information on the project? And Kay Davidson, who's a local landowner, has asked, she's interested actually in listening to updates on the mine's development. So I guess that both of them relate to updates in relation to the project. What are the communication channels that they can be looking out for? Maybe Ryan, if you want to have the first go at answering that question.
I was going to go first. I can go.
Michelle?
I'll
Okay,
go.
great.
No, that's all right. I'll go quickly and first, and then Ryan can jump in. But obviously, we've got these webinar series, but probably the next big thing will be drop-in sessions that will run over 4 weeks in June in Sale, Lindenau, Bairnsdale, and Stratford. So people can come by then and talk to us. I think we'll end up doing sort of something similar to this at the end of every month, where we just sort of jump online and give an update where we can. But if we can't see you personally, or you don't want to ring us, there's always our website. We're keeping that up to date, every day or every 2 days with various news items. Our social media channels. We've got a community newsletter that we put out in the Bairnsdale Advertiser and the Gippsland Times every 2 months. And we're taking out regular ads in the Bairnsdale Advertiser and the Gippsland Times pretty much every week or every 2 weeks. So we're trying to keep updated through the local papers, really. And yeah, Facebook and LinkedIn. Ryan, do you want to talk a little bit about the community reference group as well, which is sort of a way to get some local advocates on board,
Yeah.
and so if these guys can reach out via them?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. We had our first community reference group meeting last week, which is really productive, and that we advertised through various mediums. We have a group of 13 members, community members, farmers, business representatives. They're our initial sounding board, also advising us on the stakeholders to engage and the appropriate channels. Perhaps a bit of context too is that given the history of this project, what we find is that people are innately anchored to the old project. Some of the concerns or interest raised are in relation to the old project. So we are investing in a new, easier to navigate website and 3D visualizations to be able to get information out en masse, but that's not to say that we don't want to engage face to face. So as Michelle said, probably in the second half of this year, particularly the engagement activity will really lift. And between now and June, we're going to build on those assets to disseminate that information, correct some details.
I was just going to add as well, we don't mind, and we've we've come out for plenty of coffees and taken plenty of phone calls. So between the three of us and the extended team, we're always happy to come out and chat to community groups. Ryan's spoken at Committee for Wellington. I've spoken at a couple of different business groups and others, anyone who invites me, really. And I can pretty much say I speak on behalf of Ryan and Stefan that we'll happy to talk to any groups. We're keen to take as many people through the detail of the plan as possible, and our focus is on constructive engagement. We want to hear your feedback, and we want to listen and learn about your knowledge, local knowledge.
Thanks, guys. And so our next question is from Mr. Peter Jones. So what is the composite value on mined product from 1 cubic metre of the ore that's been mined, and is the ore body homogeneous across the total body? So a bit more of a technical question, which I might ask Stefan if he would like to address that one for the forum.
Stefan, your eyes lit up. Your eyes lit up. Question.
I saw the question
bread and butter. He loves this stuff.
I was doing some frantic math here just to continue conversion. So I'm just going to describe it first before I answer the question. Just in the value chain, what GCM is producing is a concentrate. So we sit fairly high up in the value chain. So we're producing as a gold analogy, we're producing a gold concentrate, but we're not refining gold. Now so the question about what's the value of it, it depends on where in the value chain it is. Where we sell it, it sits in around that $50 to $60 per ton of ore. That's the product as it leaves the gate is in US dollars, probably $500 to $700 a ton as it leaves the gate, and it obviously depends on commodity prices. But as it moves further down the value chain, the value of some of those items increase exponentially. We think of dysprosium oxide is close to $1,000 a kilogram. So there's huge opportunities to increase that value of the product past the concentrate stage. So, and that's the part that we're in discussion with the Victorian and federal government and other parties in Australia to unlock that value in further downstream refining. The question about the ore body, is it homogeneous or evenly mixed? And the answer, yes, it's very homogeneous. and that's just a function of how it was placed. It's effectively, it's an old estuary seabed 5 million years ago. We've done extensive variability drilling across it, and the grade and the mineral composition within that within the deposit is very homogeneous.
Thanks, Stefan. Thank you for that. So our next question is from Tim Paling, and I might throw this one to Michelle. I'm concerned about the removal of trees from road reserves to be mined. Can you tell us what you're doing to protect trees in the area? And that's from Tim Paling, who's a local resident.
Yep, sure. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, this is one area that we've really been concentrating on. And perhaps, Shannon, if you want to go to that map, I'll show you there's the fencing off of the gullies protects the native vegetation and protects the native vegetation. So if we're not mining this Perry, Simpson and Lucas Creek gullies, we're preserving the mature native trees within those gullies, and also the road reserves. So we were going to, in the 2021, there was going to be most of those roads and the trees that went with them demolished, but that's not the case anymore. So we'll be preserving 370 hectares of the high quality vegetation through the buffer zone, not mining in the buffer zone, by not mining in the gully conservation areas, and also not mining around those road verges where a lot of those mature trees are. So that will help insulate from noise and dust as well. And we'll be preserving the Fingerboards Junction area where a lot of those mature trees are located. We've got some early numbers, I think, on the numbers of trees that we're sort of saving, and I can probably put those online, I think, in the next couple of weeks when we've got them finalised. Did you want to add anything on that, Stefan? I think I've covered most of those main points.
Yeah, I dropped out for a second there. Did we discuss the road reserves as well in the?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And the next one, there's actually two. They're very similar. So I might ask for them to be answered together. And Michelle, if you might want to field it initially. So a question from Troy McDonald. What environmental impact studies are informing this potential project? That's from Troy McDonald. And then Larry Stewart from the Minerals Council of Australia has asked, in relation to the rescoping process, how is that addressing environmental impact concerns? So there's similar questions. I might ask if they're addressed together, Michelle.
Yeah, sure. Just on the what studies we're conducting, I might just go back to that table that is the list of all the studies that we're doing as part of an environmental effects statement process. So at the moment, we're conducting baseline monitoring. So we've gone out and done audits of all the equipment in field and their air quality, dust, surface water, groundwater, radiation, noise and vibration at this stage. And so they're baseline. And then we'll go on and we'll go through each of those studies that I mentioned before that you can see on the screen now. And we'll report back at those points, and we'll sort of iterate and design as we go. But as I mentioned before, we've gone through all of the environmental effects statement recommendations and ministerial recommendations from the 2021 project. And the 12 initial design changes today go a long way to addressing most of those concerns, but now we need to check and validate the theory with these studies and to see if we're right. So that's what we'll go and do now. That's the next sort of phase of this journey. We've got a long way to go. We do have a table that shows how the 12 changes that we're proposing today, along with our improved community engagement, actually addresses each of those EES recommendations, and we'll try and get that up online next week, early next week for you, so people can just sort of have a look exactly what was said last time and how we're addressing it this time, just side by side.
Right. Thank you, Michelle. Our next question is from Peter Jones from the East Gippsland Ratepayers and Residents Association. I think that is the same Peter Jones who put the feedback in the group chat. So from that organisation. So Michelle, if you might want to address this one. If the project progresses, will the Fingerboards project benefit East Gippsland ratepayers, and if so, how?
Yep, sure, no problem. This one is sort of one of our pet favourite subjects. So obviously it benefits the ratepayers through the 300 jobs that are created, and that creates, you know, taxes, money flowing through businesses. It creates rates coming through the door of the council, and it generates economic activity. Obviously, our local procurement policy generates activity and business in the local area. One of the main things as well is, I think we've said it's $90 million in the last economic study, $90 million worth of revenue generated for Victoria and $180 million for the Victorian government over the life of the mine. So they're the local economic benefits straight off the bat. And that's something that we're really pleased and always happy to talk about.
Excellent. Thanks, Michelle. So I think we've probably run out of time for today. There are some remaining questions there, so apologies that we weren't able to get through all of them in the allocated time. But I just want to thank you all for your attendance today. That concludes the second community webinar session for GCM's Fingerboard project, and we hope that it's been informative for you. The company will continue to process the process of ongoing community engagement throughout the project rescoping process, and there'll be further opportunities to receive updates, ask questions, and provide direct feedback. Thank you kindly for your attendance tonight. We thank you all very, very much, and we look forward to seeing you in the near future.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.